Hello, friends and fellow board gamers. Welcome back to Board Games with Rob. In this video, I am going to be going over a two-player version, a dual version. Yes, another dual version of a game. That seems to be the hotness anymore, is getting two-player game versions of stuff out there. And I'm on the fence as to whether or not every single game needs a two-player version specifically, or whether or not the big or main game can handle a two-player variant or handle the count at two players. I don't know. This video is going to be about White Castle Duel. Now, I really enjoyed the Big Brother, the big game of White Castle. I say the big game, it's in a little box, as is a lot of the Devir games, although they've been getting quite big lately. But yeah, White Castle, I really enjoyed the main game, and I was really excited when they announced the expansion to it, the matcha expansion that adds another die, a green die, and a whole nother board below that allows you to do uh, some game mechanics involving tea. And I was really excited to hear about that. But then, and maybe I should do a video on this. After playing it a number of times, I don't know that I like playing the White Castle main game with the expansion. I almost prefer the base game alone. I feel maybe it adds too much and maybe lengthens the game, which you'd expect with an expansion and more options. But I almost felt like it was too much. So I was a little apprehensive when Duel came out and how I might feel about yet another version of White Castle. But before I get into my feelings on that, let's go down to the table. Let me tell you how it plays, and then we'll come back up here and we'll talk about it and what I feel about this two-player version of White Castle Duel. Okay, I've got the game set up for two players. It is a two-player game. You've got the two-player boards and then the main board. You've got some resources. They have carried over the daimyo and the coins from the previous iteration. Let me zoom down to the player boards. They're going to be familiar to those that have played White Castle. Now, you are only going to be able to hold 10 of either coins or resources. You'll place these up here, and you are limited to the amount you can carry or hold at one time. Now, I've never ran out of them, so it's not a big problem. You've got your three tracks that, you've got these cubes to track your food and your armor or metal, and then your mother of pearls. You do have a new resource, and I'll explain this a little bit better, a little bit more here in a little bit. It'll allow you to switch actions out on the main board. And then you've got each player has some wooden pawns. These will be placed out onto the board through a variety of different actions. But mainly, you've got these two, rather than dice, everybody's got the same setup. You've got two white pawns, two white lanterns, two black lanterns, and two orange lanterns. And actions are going to be carried out by placing these out onto the board. Um, and then you've got a place to, if you remember from the first game, you were able to build an engine of cards. You're going to have three different engines that you're going to be able to build: a white, a black, and an orange engine of placing cards out. Again, I'll explain a little bit more of that here in a little bit. And then over here, you're going to have a place to put cards that you purchase in during the game, and you'll be able to flip those cards over to get some symbols for end of game scoring. So let's go and zoom down on the board and talk about the different actions that you have or places that you're going to be putting your lanterns. And there's 6 of them. There's 6 places to put your pawns, and they're represented by these cardboard tokens that are removable. So you're going to be able to randomly place this out onto the board. Notice they're colored so that you've got your white, your orange, and your black lantern symbols. If I go here, I've placed my lantern here, then I'm going to be able to take either of these two actions. If I place here, I can do either of these two, and then if I place here, then I can do any of these two actions. I have a spot here in the middle to place a token, over there or there, which again is going to allow me to either buy a card or do one of these actions that I'll explain. And then here on the top, I just have a place in the middle to put it. the pawn or the lantern, and then I can take either of these two actions. Now let's talk about placement rules, because that's kind of important. If you notice, they're all colored, and what you're going to be doing is you have to place a lantern out onto a color that is different than the pawn. So for example, this orange, I could either place my white one or my black lantern. Once it's placed, then I have to place a lantern that differs from this color. So I could either put my white or my orange on top of the black. And then lastly, I could only put my white. You can only stack it 3 high, and each one's essentially got to be a different color. Those are the rules. Each placement stack has to be a different color, and the one that you start with has to be different than the one that's printed on the tile. Now, as I place a pawn, I am choosing to do those two actions out on the board, buying a card and doing this action. However, when I place my lantern, whatever symbol that I cover up, in this case orange, then I'm going to run my orange card engine. Now, everybody's going to has a starting resource card that they're going to be able to pick, and on the back of these you are going to have, kind of like in the regular White Castle, the bigger game, you're going to have a resource out here. And so, for example, I would place this out here. Now, when I run my orange engine, I would get 1 food and a daimyo. But over the course of the game, I'm going to be able to get these cards. And if I get these cards, I will immediately place them and build my engine. This is how I am going to be able to play. I'm going to be able to place these cards out. And I've got a whole deck of these. So I've got, all the 3 different colors. Over time, I'm going to be able to place these cards out. And then as I cover up a symbol, in this case, I covered up my orange, then the first thing I would do is run my orange engine. In this case, I would get a food, a mother of pearl, and I would get a daimyo token. Then at that point, I am going to take both actions. In this case, I'm going to buy a card. And in this case, I would flip 2 cards. And I'll talk about these actions here in a little bit more detail here in a sec. But I just wanted to kind of talk about the placement rules. And that's kind of what's neat about the game is you're running your engine every time you place a pawn, and then you're taking 2 actions. So by placing my pawns out, I am strategically deciding what cards I want to play or what card engine I want to run, as well as what 2 actions that I want to take. All right, so let's talk about the actions that we're going to be able to take. Now, one that's repetitive and in the bottom and the middle row is buying a card. Now, these cards come in 3 different colors. You can notice there's an orange and a green and a blue. There's going to be 12 cards in each stack. You randomly place them, you shuffle the deck, and you place 12 in each of those stacks. What you will do when you place your pawn there, and if you decide to buy the card, the cost of the card is going to be in the upper left-hand corner. So in this case, I would have to spend 1 mother of pearl, and then I would do the action, whatever the action is here. In this case, I would get a well action, and then I could purchase 1 lantern card. And that's these cards that are up here. And you'll always have 3 on display with a deck of cards to pick from and replenish anytime that I purchase a card. So that's one of the ways that you would build those engines is, through these card abilities, and that would allow you to take one of these cards and put it out into your engine. Once you have obtained the card, then you're going to place the card in the respective color slot out here. So you've got your orange slot, your green slot, and your blue slot. Now, these will accumulate over time. Every time that you buy a card, you're going to put it and used it, you will put it out here. This action here, this token here, is when you take it, is going to allow you to flip 2 of your purchased cards. Now, why would you want to do that? So let's go back to the board. And if you look, when you flip the card, there's going to be a symbol on the back of the card. In this case, it's a black bird. And you'll see that the symbols are always on the cards, on the side of the card, but it's not activated as a symbol until you've taken that respective action and flipped over the card. And all these cards are going to have a variety of different symbols. So for example, this blue card, once I flip this over, I'm going to have 3 of those banners. I would place that out into my blue slot. And what these symbols are going to be end game victory, or they're going to award you. It's a way of getting end game victory points, which I'll explain after I've finished talking about all the different actions we've got. But you're going to want to be flipping these cards over. It's an important part of your strategy in getting these different symbols. More on that here in a little bit. All right, so I've talked about this action here. Let's talk about this one here. And this one here is simply running any one of your 3 engines. So I would just pick my black, my orange, or my white engine, and then I would run that. All right, now this action is the courtier action. Now, if you look out here on the board, you're going to have, and this game does a really good job of putting the symbols for all the different actions that you take in their respective locations on the board. So the courtiers is here, and what you will do is spend either 2 or 5 mother of pearl to move these tokens up the courtier track. Now, the first person to take the action will either pick this spot or this spot. And what you'll be doing is going up these tracks, eventually winding up here. And then every time you take the action, you'll move 1 or 2 spaces up the track. And whenever you land on a space that gives you a bonus, you'll be able to take that bonus. What these are going to give you are multipliers for some of those symbols that I was talking about. So for example, here I would get, for every one of my flags, I'd get 1 victory point. Here I would get 2 victory points for every flag. And if I can make it to the top of the courtier track, I would be able to get 3 victory points. All right, so I've gone over all of the actions that you can take, all of these actions down here. I've gone over the flipping the card. Let's talk about the training action. And as you notice, there's this icon that matches that right here, and it's all about placing your pawns out onto these different areas. Now, these are also removable cards, and there's a variety of them. I think there's, about 6 or 8 of them to pick from, and you'll have 2 different levels, 2 different cards that you have to pick from. And when you take this action, you're either going to spend 2 metal or you're going to spend 5 metal. And all you'll do is you'll spend that resource, and then you'll place one of your pawns either on this area or this area of the board. Now, when you place onto this board, you will either get 2 victory points, or you can get one of the action cards, one of the engine cards I was talking about, to build your engine. What this will do is provide you an end game multiplier as well. You're going to be able to multiply all of your swords and your helmets times the amount of these pawns that you have, which are your soldiers. Same thing over here. If I place something over here for 5 metal, then I can do either one of these actions. For this, I would be able to take the boat action at -1 cost, which I'll explain that action here. And this one is really cool. I love this action, is I can take one of the cards and then run the respective engines. So if I took the orange card, I'd place it and run my orange engine. And then for every soldier that I've got up here, I'll multiply my helmets by 2 victory points. So you can see over time, getting these symbols are going to be important. And those cards that you purchase on the back side of them, they're going to have everything from bird symbols to banner symbols to swords to helmets. You're going to be increasing all those different symbols you get, and then using these multipliers to get victory points. That is the training action. All right, let's talk about the garden action. And again, you can see it's clearly defined out here on the board. You will, for either 2 food or 5 food, take one of your pawns and place them out here. Now, if you're placing it in the 2 food section, and again, these are all removable and randomly placed, and you'll get column bonuses. So if I place it here in the first column, I can get one of the engine cards. If I place it here, I can get one daimyo or one coin, and over here I can get two daimyos. And again, these are randomly placed. Additionally, I will be getting symbols. So here I've got white birds, I've got swords, and I've got banners. Now, if I pay 5 food, I can place out onto this side of the board. And it's kind of hard to tell, but these are double-sided, and you've got kind of one area of the board to place them versus the left side of the board. They're a little stronger on this side because, of course, this takes 5 food to put them out here. And I've got 3 columns here as well. So here I'd be able, if I placed a pawn here, I'd be able to run any of my engines. Here I'd be able to get 1 armor. And then here I'd be able to get all the visible rewards from my white lantern. Now, additionally, if you look down here, I've got some symbols. I've got 2 banners for everyone here, a helmet, or if I was over here, I would get a white bird and a black bird. So again, I'm getting more symbols on the stronger side by spending 5 food. Lastly, the last action that you can take is the boat action, the traveling action, and that's all about going down here, and then I can do either one of these 3. For 1 good, I can have the right to purchase the top of any one of these cards. And that could be beneficial if it's taken, if the slot's taken, and I really want a particular card. Maybe I want a particular symbol, or I really like the benefits of a card. I can do that. But the main reason you're going to be doing this is by spending 2 of any good or 5 of any good to get these crate tokens. And again, these are all going to be about getting these different symbols. So therein lays your different actions that you can take. All right, now over the course of the game, each player will have placed all 6 of their action pawns out onto the board. That will be the halfway point of the game. There'll be a small player change. The first player token will switch to the other player. So the player that was second will take the last turn and then take the first turn on the back half of the game. And then the rest of the game is played by you will take a pawn off of the board, which in turn tells you that wherever you take it from, you will do the 2 actions on either side of that pawn. And then when you place the pawn, you place it on the color on your board that it represents. So in this case, it's orange. I would place it on my orange row, and then I would run that engine. And you can do those, I should say, in any order, running your engine or doing the 2 actions. So eventually, you may, over the course of the game, because these can be any height, you may, over the course of the game, maybe perhaps get all 4 of the orange tokens. There is no limit on the height of these. They all will be the same color. You don't have to place them in separate colors as you did when you were placing them out on the board. You just place them in the respective color, lantern color on your board. And after you've placed your 6 tokens or lanterns, and remove them all from the board, then the game will end. It's going to be about building up these symbols. You're going to score based upon your banners, based upon how far you got up this track. You're going to multiply your swords and your helmets based upon how many of your soldiers you got here. And then you're going to multiply the number of blackbirds you have times the white birds. You'll add all those up, and those, along with any victory points you get along the journey, will be your end victory point total. You get some minor points based upon the goods that you have. Again, kind of like the Big Brother. If you get past a certain spot on the goods bar, then you'll get some victory points there. And then I think it's every 3 or 5 coins / daimyos, you'll get a victory point. The person with the most victory points will win the game. All right, folks. So that's White Castle Duel, and it's pretty interesting. It's, I was talking about, does every game need a 2-player variant? And I will right out of the bat say no. Some games, it's a marketing thing, I think, more than anything, is trying to, I think, curtail on the success of a game and offer a dual version of the game. Now, some people love these, and I'll be interested in hearing your comments as to whether or not, you're a dual fan, of these games. Maybe and I do believe there is a market for it. You know, in some instances, people don't belong to big game groups. They want to play something with their partner, their spouse, and so maybe two player is their niche, and they don't want to have this big box. They just want to have the small box. So, yes, there is a market for it. So I guess I'm kind of arguing both sides of the fence here, and I see a need or a desire for it, but I tell you what, every time you turn around, there is a two-player variant for a game, you know, a dual version of a game. This one I really like. I'll straight out the bat say I rate this an 8. It's a different experience. It's got, you know, the actions are very similar. It's got all the same graphic artistry, artwork. It's got, you know, the same feel, but they're different actions and I'm doing different things. You know, in the main game, I was placing dice out and getting certain things based upon the pip value of that dice. And a lot of it was about, you know, dice manipulation being more or less than the die I was placing on top of it, maybe getting some resources that, you know, some coins that would allow me to do some different things. In this, it's not so much manipulation about the pawn as it is just taking those actions. And it's all about getting those icons, those labels, so that those symbols for endgame victory points. It's all about building that engine. There's something really satisfying about placing out the right color pawn to be able to get that real good engine going and then taking my actions. It's a real satisfying feeling running those engines, and you get to do it every time that you place a pawn. So you're doing two actions every time you place a pawn, and you're running that engine. So it just seems like there's always something that you're doing, something meaningful, and with the two players, you'd think maybe there wasn't a lot. You'd think you get stuck a lot, but that's where those tokens that I was talking about, these come in play where you will be able to swap any two action tiles. So if you get stuck, it's going to be important to have those so that you can swap one action tile with another so that it'll make that action that you're taking by placing that lantern down or taking, you know, in the back half of the game your lantern off more meaningful. And there is always, you know, if you can't do one of the two actions, doing that well action is going to help you out. Yeah, it's not powerful. You're only going to be able to get a good or maybe a coin or a token, but that's the main way you're going to get that swap token out back is by doing that action. I like playing White Castle, the main game at two players. It's a great game. So it's going to be kind of what you're in the mood for at that particular time. I could see me wanting to play either or and wanting to keep both. It's like having two different games named White Castle in my collection, but it's familiar territory. You know, when you pull out that dual game and you see those icons and those actions out there, you're going things will click and you'll be reminded of your actions. I like this. I like it a lot, and it's one that I'm real excited to keep. I don't like every dual version of a game that's out there. This one is one that I'm really excited about and one that I'm happy to own. Tell me your thoughts. I'm dying to hear your thoughts about these dual versions of the game. Do you like them? Do you think it's getting too much? You know, it seems like there's always a bandwagon, right? You know, it was deck building, I think, there for a while. Then it was rolling rights, I think, was a big thing. Now it's it's dual games. Every time you turn around, there's a dual version of a game. So, I mean, kudos to the publishers doing it. I mean, I guess there is a niche for it for the people that yeah, some games don't play well at two players. So anyway, folks, thanks for watching this video. I hope that you have tons of fun gaming, but more importantly, be kind to one another. Bye bye.